without telling us how old you are. How old are you? I'm at an age where I recently was disgusted by the younger generation's shenanigans. They weren't doing anything bad. Apparently some youngins are into something called skibidi toilet. It was the first time I realized I had grown up when I saw the trend and cringed profusely while everyone else reveled in it. So you may think I'm like 20, right? I'm sitting in lunch at my high ATM. I was born into the darkness before the internet, you merely adopted it. I grew up with rotary phones before push-button dialing was available. My first PC was a Commodore 64, then later an Amiga 1200. Most of my childhood was captured on VHS tape and Polaroids. My parents bought their first house with a mortgage at 18. I could go on. In high school our currency was pounds, shillings and pence. School dinners were 5 shillings a week. My favorite program when I was a kid was cancelled in the UK because JFK was killed. I'm retired and work in the scope shop. I saw Leonard Skinner at Leeds University a year or so before the plane crash. Okay, you've got 3 guesses. In this blessed year, when Jurassic Park, The Nightmare Before Christmas and Last Action Hero were coming in the theaters, these awesome people came to life: the actor Brandon Flynn, the singer Ariana Grande, and me, and also the adult performers Mia Khalifa and Lena Paul. I remember the innovation in computer games where you no longer had to sit and wait for the tape to load the whole game, because developers had piggybacked another, simpler, game onto the loading screen. You could play Space Invaders while your chosen game was loading. I played with first edition My Little Pony, Cabbage Patch Dolls, and had a speak and spell. Watched the Smurfs on Saturday mornings and the Flintstones when I would go home for lunch. Saw Back to the Future and Ghostbusters at the drive-in when they came out. I remember being the first in my high school to bring a cell phone to class. I purchased it with my own money. It was taken away by my English teacher. The staff was absolutely shocked. Also, I remember the days before every family had a PC at home. I was still a baby when 9/11 happened. Another way to say it is that I remember growing up having to race to use the bathroom, get snacks between the commercials on TV. 1-800-LUNA, today, is seared into my brain on a chemical level at this point. My first OS was Windows 3.1 and we had a 9600 baud Hayes modem as a kid. This was luck of a lifetime. I now laugh when people get pissed about their Wi-Fi 6E being slow. It's like, well, at least you didn't fail to install Windows 95 on disk 13 of 27. Shirts with your name on the back were popular. Excuse me, princess. Everyone tried to sing the song Informer and failed. Kurt Cobain made us all sad. Bombing Iraq was a big deal. O.J. Simpson not guilty. Alcoholism. I got my first cell phone when I was a senior in high school, and it was a shitty flip phone as smartphones either did not exist yet or were not on the market yet. More than half of my classmates did not have one. I had to take a special trip to the library on Saturday to look up a fact in an encyclopedia, write it down and bring it into school on a Monday, just to win an argument that happened the previous Tuesday. My first phone was a Firefly. My parents bought it for me cause they were both working a lot, so if I needed to contact anyone I could. Never actually used the thing, but it's funny to think back to. My first concert was NSYNC when they first started blowing up. Then in junior high my favorite band was Linkin Park when their first album released. I was also in the 8th grade during 9/11. The first video game I played was a console that played one game, and you had to attach a switch box to the antenna screws on the back of your TV. Also, your TV had to be set to channel 3. Born at the time where a war was waged somewhere around the world by Americans for the sake of revenge, and was there when Osama bin Laden beat him up. Flash games were peak entertainment. I was my dad's remote. He would say change the channel and I would get up and do it. We only got 2 channels most of the time, but when things were just right we got a 3rd. My first experience as a young teen with a Super NES was a display on the 2nd floor of Sears at a local mall. And it was where I first played Star Fox and Super Mario World. For my 10th birthday I rented a Super Nintendo from a local movie rental store not too long after they came out and invited some friends over to play Mario World and F-Zero. The first movie I remember seeing in theaters is Toy Story 3, and now 13 years later it's still one of my favorite movies, but it's different now because I'm almost Andy's age. I have no memory of this, but seems my first time gaming was on a C64. And damn, I knew all 151 Pokémon by name, in the right order of course. And a couple of Digimon. I remember running outside to gaze at jets and wonder as they were a brand new invention. When I was born, no atom bombs had yet been detonated, and FDR was the president. My Higgs Cool CD player had 12 seconds of buffer memory to keep the music going during jostling, which was an upgrade from my junior high CD player that only had 3 seconds. I watched Blue Clues as a kid. I had a Razr cell phone in the 6th grade as my first phone. I'm at the age where they say women's eggs start drying up or whatever lol. I watched the Challenger disaster happen live on TV with all my 3rd grade classmates. Every classroom in America was watching because a teacher was going into space. PBS started airing in my area when I was 5 or 6. Before that we only had 3 channels. We also rented VCRs from the same grocery store we rented tapes from. The month I was born the 2 biggest hit songs were Bad and I Think We're Alone Now. Shortly afterwards the first episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles aired. I watched the Challenger explosion live on TV in school. MTV played music videos. The dreaded incoming call while online and being kicked off the internet. I am able to vote and drive. I can't buy alcohol, and I don't recall airports before 9/11. But I can grasp most allusions to the 1990s that are made. I was old enough that the religious blamed D&D for most of society's problems and you can wear a trench coat to school and nobody would look twice. I was taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America. And the Pilgrims were the 5th settlers in North America when I was in kindergarten. I went from a flip phone to a Sidekick to a BlackBerry all during high school. iPod Touch was the shit back then and a lot of skepticisms on iPhone. Games had to be on channel 3 or 4 on the RF switch. I remember calling a phone for the time. Gas was like 88 cents a gallon when I started driving. People are shocked I just had a baby when they find out my age. I'm not supposed to think I can have another baby, but probably we are gonna. I never got to experience airports pre 9/11 and the currency I grew up using was a euro. I didn't even know there was something before it. I remember when cars came with ashtrays. I also remember when you needed 2 keys for cars. 1 key to open the doors, and 1 key to start it. Old enough to have used cassette tapes, VHS, and dial-up internet. But young enough to have grown up with CD, MP3, DVD, and modern internet. Sesame Street premiered on my 5th birthday. I remember watching the episode numbers increase, and I remember them being 2-digit numbers. I remember my parents only being allowed to buy gasoline on odd-numbered days of the month and waiting in long lines to do so. I know how to use a rotary phone and I remember having to ask my parents to get off the phone so I could dial into the internet. We learned how to use BASIC on Commodore 64s at school, to be able to make the screen flash with our names. Also, Oregon Trail. I remember sitting in Mrs. McCarran's 6th grade class when the announcement about JFK's assassination came over the loudspeaker. Brass Monkey was a pre-mixed bottled cocktail. I didn't know this until several years later, after I had worn out that cassette. My first computer when I was around 20 years old had a cassette tape drive, used 5K of memory and had a 50-baud acoustic modem. Our remote control was my dad telling me to change the channel cause I was laying in front of the console and was closest. I also had a Nintendo the month they were released. My brother and I immediately became the hangout house among our friends. I remember hearing it live. 1 small step for a man, 1 giant leap for mankind. The world stopped and it was awesome. I remember when you could say literally anything on Xbox Live and never get banned. Kids just yelling the N-word all game. I had an original Livestrong bracelet. I was the envy of my high school for like a whole day a couple different times. Old enough I saw the Berlin Wall come down on TV. Young enough I thought it looked like a football victory celebration. I remember when I got my first smartphone in college. Or renting movies games from places like Redbox or Blockbuster. Nintendo Wii was my first console. I grew up with YouTube and Minecraft was at peak popularity when I was growing up. When I was born in Europe, we weren't allowed to eat mushrooms because they could have been radioactive and harmful. All that. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Legends of the Hidden Temple, Guts, Hey Arnold, Angry Beavers. I can't use the last 2 digits of my birth year in an email or username without everyone thinking I'm a Nazi. I kept my Tamagotchi alive while wearing my jelly sandals and my Spice Girls t-shirt waiting for my AOL to load. Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin died. The song of the year was Bridge Over Troubled Waters by Simon and Garfunkel. My favorite childhood cartoon would be The Fairly Odd Parents, Jimmy Neutron and SpongeBob SquarePants. Eyes. At 10 p.m. the TV would stop and broadcast a message saying it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Risky Business and The Outsiders were released the same year I was. Crying Face, Scarface 2. Among many other classics. Kids in my year are one of the last people that got taught cursive in elementary school, at least in Finland. Favorite Saturday morning cartoons: The Chick, X-Men, Eek the Cat. Power Rangers was a little too kiddie for me. Dial-up internet. Made it real difficult to sneak online at night as a teenager due to the ridiculous noise. I've used a phone book, a typewriter, a VCR, a newspaper classified ad, and driven a car with a carburetor. I watched Cartoon Network's Powerhouse era with the cartoons, Toonami, and plenty of old cartoons. Selling lobbies. Buying green fat. Buying GF. Trimming Armor tin cassette. Buying Full Hide. Switching to Channel 3 for the N64. And also my mom yelling, "Get off the computer, I need to make a call." One of the best parts of the weekend were my parents renting VHS movies at Blockbuster on a Friday night. I remember floppy disks, dial-up internet, Blockbuster, Windows 97, and was old enough to remember 9/11. I owned a red Michael Jackson jacket as a kid and my first computer was a Tandy 1000 from Radio Shack. I used to watch Romper Room and dance to the Bee Gees in a local disco dance hall. Good times. I was as enthused as the rest of the crowd when the Wright brothers showcased their flying machine. Pokémon, Game Boy Color, Dragon Ball Z, Saint Seiya, PBS Arthur and Magic School Bus. Go figure! For the first time since 1945, Germany existed as a single country. They reunited in the same year. The first time I played DD with friends was in the 3rd grade. It was this brand new 2nd edition. I remember when snack pudding was packed in metal cans. Also, soda can tabs had to be pulled off. I unironically have a mullet and a laser background in several of my elementary school photos. In grade school, we were all gathered in the cafeteria to watch the first Apollo moon landing.